Hello, I'm Craig and welcome to another episode of FootballKitMemories. Today I meet the host of BBC Scotland's A View From the Terrace, Craig G Telfer. I asked Craig what it's like transitioning from the world of podcasting to TV, what it's like to work at the BBC, and the charms of lower league Scottish football. During the show I asked Craig to pick out 3 of his favourite football shirts and tell me a little bit about what they mean to him. There's a promotional season for his hometown club Stenhousemuir, the famous Scotland Tartan Army special at Euro 96, and an Arsenal shirt from a time where Arsenal sort of stopped being invincible. You can listen to this and other episodes of FootballKitMemories on all major audio platforms including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do subscribe, share, and above all, enjoy the podcast. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm joined by TV's Craig G Telfer. How you doing, Craig?
I'm good, Craig. Nice to see you. How's things?
Mate, very well, thank you. I'm really excited to have a chat.
Yeah, I'm very chuffed to have been asked on, and it's always good to get the chance to reminisce about your favourite kits and all the stuff that ties in with them. So when I was thinking back, I thought, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Nice, mate. Nice. So listen, I follow Scottish football. I'm a Scotland fan, but for anybody that doesn't, can you just give us a bit of background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Craig Telfer. I present a View From the Terrace. It's a weekly show that goes out on the BBC Scotland channel. We've been doing that with my really good mates since 2019. The show was spun off from the podcast, The Terrace, so very lucky to have had the opportunity to do that. And I support Stenhousemuir FC. They play in Scottish League 2. Perhaps the most unsuccessful side out of the 42. No, I think definitely the most unsuccessful side out of the 42 in terms of silverware and promotions and trophies. Never won a trophy. They've won a Challenge Cup, but never won a league title since 1884. So it's a lot. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, in my lifetime, I can see the team win something. But given how they've been these past 100 odd years, it's looking slim.
So you said, mate, the Terrace that you mentioned, that began life as a podcast and it's now transitioned, or it kind of goes hand in hand with the TV show as well.
Aye.
How has that transition been for you in terms of moving from audio to TV?
To begin with, it was the guys in the Terrace, we'd never done television before. I had been on like STV Live, but back a few years ago in 2016, I was asked on to talk about things that had been in the paper. So in terms of that, you were on for like 2 minutes. So that was, I think, it was the only person to have experience, and even then, it was a tiny bit. So when the opportunity came up to do the TV show, when the guy from David Harron from BBC Scotland approached Craig Fowler, who's the head of the Terrace, and said, "Is this viable to turn this into a podcast?" Turn it into a TV show. We thought he was at it. We thought Fowler had been duped. This guy was a confidence trickster and he was going to somehow get his hands on Fowler's Building Society book. But we got in touch with guys at Robert Borthwick, who also is in a View for the Terrace. He works with a production company and they coincidentally were looking to get into television. And they set up a meeting with Fowler and we made a pilot, which was absolutely surreal. Never in a million years thinking it would get picked up. And a couple of months later, found out we were. So it was incredible. And it's so much fun. And there's that many things on a podcast. You can just talk, you can just talk and you don't really need to necessarily think about the length or really what you're saying. But on the television show, there's so many other things to be aware of, like what you're wearing, how things look, what you're wearing, how it ties in with what everyone else is wearing, how long you're speaking for, bringing other people into the conversation. And to begin with, you're doing it on a week-by-week basis, so you're really learning on the job. And it was a bit surreal, and it took a bit of getting used to. But now I think that the 4 of us, 5 of us and Robert, we're all quite comfortable doing it. And it's great fun. I think particularly during lockdown, it's very challenging. And for myself, if I didn't have that, I'd be stuck in the house all day, working than not working. So the opportunity to go out and make a hang about with your pals, talk about football and do it on the telly, it's amazing. Very, very fortunate, very lucky in the position that we're in.
Nice. So I guess moving from a podcast to TV, there's a massive kind of increased level of exposure for you guys as well, what you guys do. Has there been kind of good bits and bad bits of that?
I suppose the good bits are having the profile, you know, to be asked to do something like this. That's class. Like people getting in touch and asking you to appear in podcasts and do stuff. That's brilliant. And like with Stenhousemuir, but before the lower leagues were shut down, I was doing the co-commentary for Warriors TV, which was amazing, because getting the chance to actually go and watch the football in person was brilliant. You know, very, very lucky to be able to do that. And hopefully there might be other opportunities that might lead on from this. In fact, there was stuff I was doing again before lockdown for the Scottish FA. They've got a hospitality thing, the business club, where you can pay a subscription and you get like hospitality in the Hampden Museum, and they would have a former Scotland player, and I'd get to interview them and talk about their playing for Scotland. So I got to interview Kenny Miller. Darren Jackson was one. And for the game against Israel, which was going to be in March 2020, they were going to have Dennis Law along. And I was thinking, fuck, get a chance to interview Dennis Law. But the whole thing was cancelled because of the pandemic. Wow. And so that opportunity didn't happen. So that's the good stuff from the show. The bad stuff from the show, as we were talking off air, is people saying your clothes are shite online. You know, it's quite weird. You know, you make podcasts and stuff, and there's like a small audience for it that get in touch and let you know if you're doing stuff well, if you're doing stuff bad. But suddenly, if you're on like national television, that's amplified. You get a lot more people telling you that what you're saying shite. So getting used to the negative comments was something to begin with. If you're making something you really care about with your friends, and there's people saying this is shite, these guys are wankers, that's difficult to get used to. But then you just don't go looking for it. You know, don't go looking for it on social media, and you only take advice from the people whose opinion you would go seeking in the first place. I think that's good, and it's the people say stuff, they don't know you. You know, it's just quite difficult. I mean, it's on a small scale. I don't want to give the impression that I'm just trying to think like being hounded. You know, I've got to like leave my house. Like there's people waiting for me outside. It's certainly not on that scale, but it's just sort of a weird thing that you get used to. But not on the whole, a thoroughly positive experience. Thoroughly positive.
Nice. So I think, like, especially a lot of the coverage of Scottish football, obviously Scottish football is dominated by two clubs from Glasgow, from the west of Scotland. And I think what's interesting about the show and what you guys do is that you're all from out with Glasgow, right? And you also support teams that aren't part of the old firm. So is that kind of refreshing, do you think? Is that why it's been so successful and been picked up?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think one of the things, we don't actively go out our way to not talk about Rangers and Celtic. If Rangers and Celtic are doing something that's interesting and worth talking about, you have to discuss it. You know, but we treat Rangers and Celtic with the same levels of respect we would treat Montrose and Arbroath and Falkirk and Cowdenbeath. If these teams are doing something interesting, then we'll talk about them. And it's you're not like being reverential towards the old firm. You're reverential to all the teams, and you'll take the piss out all the teams as equally. And I think that's what people find refreshing. We can go from 1 minute talking about Kevin Nisbet like getting on the cusp of a Scotland call-up to talking about Brecon City trying to avoid 10th place and finishing the relegation spot. And it's that, I think that seamlessness that hasn't, and to me, surprising that it's not been done before, not really been done before on the television, because there's so much richness to Scottish football out with, like, not just out with Rangers and Celtic, but out with the Premiership. There's so many good stories. And I think that's one of the things that we're quite good at doing, is shining a light in it and talking about it, and perhaps introducing people to players and clubs and grounds that they might not have considered before.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I watched Football Focus, I think it was last week. They ran a piece that ran on your programme as well about Vale, the boys club, the club that's had all those kind of Hibs players through. A lot of Scottish footballers have come through that boys club. Do you get a lot of audience outside of Scotland, do you know?
I think increasingly so. There's people on social media that have just stumbled across the show. You know, they've been flicking through the channels at night, and they just happen to stumble across it, and it's great to hear that people. I mean, it's aimed at a Scottish audience, but people from England who have watched it. That's incredible, and to make that connection and feel like they're learning, like I was saying earlier, learning something about teams that they perhaps never even thought about, like Cowdenbeath, a great name that you hear from like the final score, just one of those like abstract, arcane, Scottish sounding names that you wouldn't get here for. So that's really good to hear. And I think that those small those videos, like the one about Hutchison Vale, the one about Eriskay, I don't know if you saw that one about the team, the team that play in Eriskay, and which was incredible, absolutely astonishing piece of filmmaking. To see people watch that and connect with that's really good. And but more so, if it not more so, but it's really interesting that people out with Scotland are engaging with it and saying positive things about it as well. That's really pleasing to hear.
Yeah, do you know what? I think BBC Scotland has done a really good job in terms of making programs that resonate for Scotland. I think they've done a really good job in terms of like the level of quality that they do, but also kind of it's available to everybody and people are engaging with it. I've definitely seen that and a lot of good feedback and things. That's fantastic.
No, I'd agree with you. I think there's the fear of like a new like Scotland channel, that it might be the shortbread and quite twee and tartan trousers, and that's not Scotland. That's perhaps an international perception of Scotland, but that's not the Scotland I know. And the stuff that I have seen on the BBC Scotland channel you're absolutely right, is very good at representing Scotland, and it's very, very real. I think a lot of the people in it are very real, and the stuff that I've watched, I found it really entertaining, very relatable as well.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. So, mate, this is the last question I'm going to ask you before we start talking about football shirts. So, as I mentioned, I'm a fan of Scottish football, but obviously Scottish football, unfortunately, out with the country does get a bit of a bad rap sometimes. So, as a big advocate of Scottish football yourself, can you tell me what have the Scottish leagues got that other leagues don't?
One of the things that the Scottish football has, and I don't like doing it, but I'm going to compare it to English football, the Premiership, because that's readily available to people in Scotland, and that's when things happen in Scotland. That's it's almost automatically as compared to English football. But I'd say there's an authenticity there that's perhaps lacking from the Premiership. It's very like VAR, for instance. God forbid if that ever came into Scotland. the over commercialization of it. The English football is good to watch, but it's almost like a pudding. You would maybe have it at the end of a fancy meal, but you couldn't survive on it. Sure. Whereas Scottish football is chicken breast, for want of a better expression. It's something that you need, and I do think that the grounds, some of them are really rickety. Some of them are dilapidated. Some of the quality of the football's not great. But there's just something about when you're in those grounds on a Saturday and seeing the faces and seeing these people connecting with this football on the pitch, it doesn't necessarily have the greatest quality. That is... It's inexplicable. I can't really put my finger on what makes that so great. It's the sort of thing that you would have to go and really experience. Go to like a Somerset Park or Central Park where Cowdenbeath play. There's some great stuff in the terraces, and something, for the fact that there's not a lot of quality there, when those moments do shine, that makes it all the more special. You've seen some, like, watch football for a long time, seen some absolutely glorious moments in the most unexpected places, and that's what makes it particularly beautiful.
Fantastic, mate. Very well put. Well, once lockdown ends, I'm going to get myself to some lower league Scottish football. So let's talk about some football shirts, Craig. So the first kind of generic question I always ask everybody is, what do football shirts mean to you?
That's a good question. I think the older I'm getting, football shirts are sort of tied in with fashion. I think that's, as we're doing this just now, I'm wearing a Juventus top that is made by Adidas and Palace, the skateboard company.
Very nice.
And that was that. Thank you. That came out in 2019, and very unusual for, like, I think Palace have done collaboration with Umbro and Reebok and Adidas in the past, but certainly with Juventus, like one of the biggest football clubs in the world, that's really put that brand on a stage. So wearing something as cool as, I think it's an absolutely fantastic piece of kit, if I say so myself. That's really cool. But when I'm thinking back to when I was younger, certain colours, certain cuts, certain manufacturers are inextricably linked with players and moments. And the kits that I've selected here, I cannot think of these certain players without thinking about certain football kits.
Right.
And to me, that's a sense of place, a sense of occasion that you could not imagine it happening in any other strip, particularly some of the ones that we're going to talk about later that I cannot in my head imagine it taking place in anything else. So that's definitely memory, great moments, pleasure, disappointments. They're all linked to these football kits.
All very intrinsic to football for you then.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So I think the fashion sort of stuff's boring because like anything can be a piece of fashion, you know. But that's probably just you're older, your taste change. Football, while still very important, you don't get as caught up in it because you kind of realise that there's other things at play. Whereas when you're younger and that's all you look forward to is going to the football, then that becomes inextricably like football kits represent you, they represent your team. That is what these players are wearing. That is, they could have your face on the kit. That's how strong it is linked. But I mean, Juventus is a team. Juventus don't mean anything to me. This is just quite a nice strip. But the ones we're talking about, they are the ones that are seared into my back of my brain.
Okay, well, let's talk about your first one. So you've gone very niche with this, and I like it. Now, I gather this is your team. This is Stenhousemuir.
Yes.
It's the 08-09 home shirt by Adidas.
Yes. I went for this one purely because it's the first time that Stenhousemuir have actually been made by a kit of any real repute for the last number of years. A lot of the time it's like Mitre. They're currently made by Ulsport, and not the most attractive of kits. And apparently, though, that the bigger the manufacturer, the more difficult they are to deal with. So I think that's perhaps why Stenhousemuir have gone and smaller clubs have gone down a certain route. But I chose this one because this kit is linked to one of my all-time favourite moments in football. And the 08-09, as we mentioned earlier, Stenhousemuir are not a successful club. You know, never won a title, but they have won a couple of promotions. And this was the kit that they wore when they got promoted via the playoffs in 2008, 2009. So that's very, very happy memories. So that's why I went for this one.
So have you always been a Stenhousemuir fan?
I didn't get into Stenhousemuir until I was really about 17 when I was actually finishing up at school. They're my local team, Stenhousemuir. But I went, they had a cup run in 1995 where they beat Aberdeen. They beat Aberdeen 2-0. Right. Which was still the most incredible result in the club's history, and the whole town was caught up in that because it's a massive thing. You're playing one of the biggest clubs in the country, a big occasion for the town, big occasion for the club, and Stenhousemuir were absolutely fantastic that day. So I went to that and went to I think it was a quarter final against Hibernian. They lost 4-0, and I think as a wee boy being caught up with so many people in the one place, like it's just like 5 minutes from your front door. I think that's incredible. But when it came to the bread and butter, like when you're playing like Meadowbank Thistle or whoever, that's really not as exciting. So that doesn't hold your imagination. Right. But it wasn't until like I finished up at school, there was a guy that said you should come along. So I was like, I had nothing else on Saturday. Why not go along to the home game? And this is 2004 in the process of getting relegated.
Right.
And I went. And I remember thinking, how on earth can anyone watch this football? This is dreadful. This is really dreadful to watch. It's guys don't look particularly fit. It's guys who I remember from my sticker albums as a wee boy that you're thinking, how on earth, what are they doing here? What on earth has happened to them that they've wound up here? And I'm just thinking, this is rubbish. But weirdly, I went the next week. And it changed, and it was like, this is incredible. I cannot explain. I've tried many years to try and think as to what that change was from one week to the next. But going that second week, seeing the same people, I don't know if it was seeing the same people there, and just the standard of football was still poor, but suddenly the picture all completely changed for me. And it was like, It was in that moment, it was like, I'm a Stenhousemuir fan. And that summer, that was towards the end of the season when the team were being relegated. I just remember thinking, I cannot wait for this season to start the 04-05 season. I really cannot wait to get the chance to come and see them again. And so going in pre-season friendlies and watching them play Motherwell with James McFadden with the red mohawk.
Oh, wow.
was playing there, and just going like every home game that season and just thinking, this is brilliant. I am a Stenhousemuir fan. And it was that from that 1 week to the next, that was the moment. Can't explain what happened or why the whole picture suddenly became more vital and important, but that was it.
Very nice, mate. So what's the ground like there? How many does it hold, and what kind of conditions is it?
It can hold a couple of thousand, I think about 1,800 maybe.
Okay.
The last time it was full, we played Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup at the start of 2020. Yeah, we drew with them at 1-1 at Pittodrie and got the chance to play them again in the replay. So it was full for that, which was incredible. It's in terms of lower league grounds. If you were to begin your journey in the lower leagues, it's probably one I would say you might want to leave later on to tick off the list.
Okay.
It's not the most iconic. It's got a synthetic surface.
Oh, wow.
It's got one grandstand, the Norway stand, where Stenhousemuir have got a group of Norwegian supporters.
Right.
Again, not 100% sure how they got involved, but they sponsor players. They come over once a year. The Player of the Year awards got a trophy which is remarkable. The Norway stand, and they've got a wee bit of terracing that runs behind one of the goals, the Trice Road end, and it's a perfectly appropriate ground for where Stenhousemuir are and what they need. When it's sold out, like with games against Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup, games against Falkirk, then it's bouncing. You know, you can get a right good atmosphere. But most of the time, it's about 400-500 people there for it, and it's perfectly nice. Perfectly nice. But I'd say, yeah, maybe you want to go to your Cowdenbeaths and your Brecons and your Montrose before. Stenhousemuir's quite like further down the list in that regard.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll catch one of those with Stenny playing away there or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So, mate, let's move on to your next shirt. This is one that a lot of people will know, a lot of people remember. It's the Tartan shirt by Umbros from Euro 96. Tell me more, mate.
This one, when we said there's players that are inextricably linked to this shirt, this shirt is Ali McCoist.
Yeah.
This shirt is Ali McCoist. When we made the pilot for A View from the Terrace back in July or August 2018, the set is very different. The set for the pilot is very different to the finished one. We had a lot of like old football kits up. We can't do that for copyright reasons for this one, but the set for the pilot, all these kits, all these memorabilia, and one of the ones, they had a Tartan Scotland shirt with McCoist 9 in the back. And I remember looking at that shirt and just thinking, this is just pure Ali McCoist. And I would have been 10 when Scotland played in Euro 96. And I remember, first sort of memory of tournament football was the 94 World Cup. And I remember I had a VHS, sort of highlights VHS that I used to watch at my grand's house all the time. You know, you go to your grand's house, you watch the same thing over and over again. That was a USA 94. But the 96 one was the first one I can sort of remember, like active, because obviously Scotland weren't like actively having something that you really care about. And I remember it would have been the second game against England. I remember watching this up at my dad's friend's house. So I mean, my dad, my brother, my dad's friend, his son, the six of us. The five of us were there. There's parts of that game that I can remember. I remember one bit in particular, and it was when Scotland won their penalty, when Gordon Durie was brought down. And I remember my dad celebrating, like I've got a foot for my face, celebrating. Then Gary McAllister stepping up to take the penalty, David Seaman saving it, the corner being cleared, and then Paul Gascoigne like going from high as a kite 1 second to thinking you're going to tie the game to think, well that's it, you just lost a world-class player scoring a world-class goal, like that, flicking the ball over Colin Hendry's head and finishing, and thinking, and just being disappointed, but being more disappointed after seeing my dad and his friend's reaction. And at the end of the game, him just saying, he's like, son, this happens all the time. And
this is Scotland, son, get used to it.
That's it, you know, something that you don't appreciate it, but he's like 100% right. That's exactly what it's like. Never get your hopes up about anything. And I just remember that was very disappointing. But the next game against Switzerland, beating them, and Ali McCoy scoring a really good goal from just outside the area. So that shirt, that tartan shirt, that sort of purpley blue shirt, linked to Euro 96. and sort of like, you tie that in with maybe you can tie that in then with a sense of like my own sense of Scottishness and my own sense of nationality is that there's good moments, but peppered in with a lot of disappointment. That's probably a metaphor for life, actually. Maybe that's what it's like supporting a lower league team. Is that it's like for life, you get a handful of good moments, but most of the time's an absolute slog. And I think that's perhaps a handy metaphor for life itself. Maybe.
Good. Very good. So how do you feel about the upcoming game against England in the Euros this year?
I think that Scotland will be in for a very, very difficult game. I think that England as an attacking force are really, really impressive. I think they've got some of the most exciting forwards in European football, like Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Phil Foden coming through, Raheem Sterling, Harry Kane's such a good player. Yeah. And I think that we're really going to have to be in our mettle to defend against that, because these guys are really good. However, when you from goalkeeper, don't think England are particularly well stocked in goals. Nick Pope maybe is the best thing, and even then he's sort of playing at mid-cut, like lower level in the Premiership. The defence, if you think back a couple of years ago, England having like their back, like Ashley Cole's best left back I think I've seen in my lifetime. Guys like Sol Campbell, John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, brilliant, some fantastic central midfielders. To so much so at the point that Paul Scholes was marginalised in that England team because he was so good. To think then that it's like now there's not a lot to be excited about as an England fan, and I think that maybe guys like John McGinn and Scott McTominay, they're having right good seasons. Billy Gilmour, who's emerging at Chelsea, Lyndon Dykes, who seems to be doing okay at Queen's Park Rangers. If these guys are on their game and can get in about it, maybe Scotland can do something. But I'm going in there that just happy to be participating. As long as we give it a good go, that's the most important thing.
Temper the excitement and you won't be disappointed, mate.
You know something? Exactly. That's it. But pessimist is never disappointed.
Exactly. So, mate, your final shirt is the Arsenal home shirt. I think it's used for 2 seasons, 06 to 08 by Nike. Yeah. How come you pick this one?
My English team is Arsenal. Uh-huh. I've actually been I say falling. I've never actually been to a game. I feel a bit embarrassed when I say I support, and I'm using massive air quotes there, support Arsenal. But I've been following Arsenal since like 1997, like a lot longer than I followed Stenhousemuir. I had a video game. I don't know if you played it. It was Premier Manager 97, 98. On the PlayStation, you could finish a season in an hour. It's not exactly like Football Manager now, where you spend like half an hour arranging your team, going into games and fixing it. It did not have the same level of complexity as that. Yeah. I went Arsenal in that. And in fact, I actually went Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool and Newcastle and just transferred all the best players over to Arsenal. So I cheated playing it. I've liked it. Arsenal's been my team since then. And looking back, probably didn't appreciate how good they were under Wenger, the late 90s into the early 2000s. I mean, that was, invincibles, Thierry Henry, Robert Pires, Sol Campbell, like world-class players playing this Arsenal team. But I find this Arsenal team more fascinating because they were supremely talented guys who had brilliant art players for Arsenal, went on to win trophies elsewhere, but how close they came to winning a league title. And when you look at some of the names in that Arsenal team, like guys like Robin van Persie, Cesc Fabregas, my all-time favourite Arsenal player. Yeah. Alexander Hleb was playing in that team. Bakary Sagna, like Mathieu Flamini was coming through at that point. Gilberto Silva was still playing. Emmanuel Adebayor, really, really good players, and thinking that they had a really, really good chance of winning the league. And I was actually looking back through the scores, and you're going back to February 2008, the game against Birmingham, where Eduardo da Silva's leg was broken early on by Martin Taylor. And William Gallas, who was the captain, throwing that tantrum when they conceded a penalty late on and sitting in the centre circle, and then drawing, like they drew the next 3 games, lost to Chelsea, then lost at Manchester United, and ended up finishing in 3rd place. And you're thinking, that was such a huge opportunity to win a league title. And then for Arsenal under Wenger, then it became next season they'll do it.
Yeah.
Next season they'll do it, and it never happened. And then sadly towards the end of his time became a bit toxic, the sort of division between the supporters. But that season and that shirt, that's the glorious failure. You know, that's why I like it so much, that these guys were incredibly gifted group of players who weren't able to deliver.
So there's a bit of a theme here with these 3 shirts then.
Well, to be fair, the Stenhousemuir one was glory. They won the playoffs there, but the Scotland ones and the Arsenal ones, no, they were the Scotland ones just because it was a great game. But the Arsenal one that season with that group of players. You think, how on earth, and some of the football they played as well. How on earth did this team not win a cup? But that's it. That's something so good. Something comes so tantalisingly close,
mate. Well, there you go. Well, mate, that's an amazing 3 choices. Thanks so much.
No, thank you for having me on, Craig. That was really good to get a chance to talk to you.
Oh, mate, great to speak to you too. So, mate, what should we look out for from you coming up?
Every Friday, please, 10:30 on the BBC Scotland channel, A View from the Terrace is on. There's loads of great stuff there to bewitch and enrich you about Scottish football. We just like having a laugh talking about, I'd say, all the teams. There's only 22 playing at the moment.
Yeah,
but just doing that and just enjoying it yourself. And if you like Scottish football and you like if you like hearing something a wee bit different, this might be the show for you.
Very nice. And I'd recommend listening to your guys' podcast as well, The Terrace.
Yeah, it does the other thing as well. Yeah, The Terrace is good. There is content going out on a daily basis from there, be it on the main show or the Patreon. So there's tons of stuff in there to keep you entertained.
Lovely stuff, mate. Thanks so much.
No, thank you, Craig. That was a real pleasure. Great to talk to you.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Craig for sharing his football kit memories with me. You can follow me, my own collection on Instagram, or get in touch via Twitter or email. Make sure you follow Craig too, tune into the Terrace Podcast, and catch a view from the terrace on the iPlayer. Oh yeah, you might have noticed a new tune. It's produced by an artist I've been listening to since I was a kid. His name's Eva Led, and I've linked out his Bandcamp profile in the notes section. Give him a listen, and better still, purchase some of his music. And other than that, I guess that's it. Until next time, I'll see you later.